Hey, I am always looking for board games that I can play with my family, and I especially like board games that are interesting for me, but also approachable for my younger daughter. My daughter is 6 now. She can't really read on her own, and sometimes she struggles with her attention span. So, what I do to find these games is I'll go to BoardGameGeek, and sometimes I'll scour the top 100 family or top ranked family board games. But I found that this is not the best list if you have younger kids. And so it's taken some searching, and I've played so many board games. But what I wanted to share with you was those games in the Board Game Geek Top 100 family list that I think are suitable if you have younger players. So kids that are struggling to read or may have a tough attention span. So of the ones that are on the list, I found that there are a few like obstacles that are really making these less accessible to my kids. Either they are games where there are objectives that are kind of abstract, or they have a chain of effects that the kids can't really wrap their heads around, or they are games where there are communication limits and you can't really help your child without ruining the game. You know, the kinds of games where cards are secret and they require some reading and your child is struggling to read the card and you want to be able to kind of lean in and interpret it for them, but to do so would spoil the game, so to speak. So communication limits, abstract or difficult to understand objectives, and then there's just games whose mechanics don't really appeal to the kids. And then you've got other games that, solve all of this. They are fun for everybody. They are easy to understand, but they don't take away from the strategy or the gameplay that's involved. And if a child does need help, it doesn't really upset the gameplay to kind of lean in and look at what they've got and maybe help them out with a turn. So those are the kinds of games that I'm looking at on this list today. That's not to say the games that I'm going to skip over aren't fun or aren't great games. There are plenty of games that I don't think are great for my kids and I think are excellent when I'm playing with my friends or when I'm playing with other adults. I think there are plenty of games on this list that are excellent when you're playing with new to gaming players. But today's video is about children ages 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, right now, my daughters are 6 and 8, but I've been playing games with my youngest daughter since she was 4. So I have quite a vocabulary here. Now, if you are not familiar with how to find this list, I'm going to show you how. At least this is how I find this list. Check the comments. There has got to be an easier way to get to this list. But what I normally do is if you click on Browse and you click All Board Games on BoardGameGeek here, then that's going to take you to the top ranked 100. But this is overall games. So what you can do is either search for, or if you are on the top 100 and you just find a family game, like for example Wingspan, you could search for Wingspan or find it, and then it'll say that its overall ranking here is 24, and its strategy ranking is 28, and its family ranking is 1. So if you click on the family ranking, that'll take you to the top 100 family games. Now, the idea that I have is to look at all of these, but given that I don't want this video to be too long, I've prepared in advance. So what we're going to look at is my little cheat sheet. So I have categorized all 100 of the games. Well, all. I've played about 60 of these games, and I've read or looked into about 15 or 20 more. So I feel like I can categorize most of them, and at least most of the top ranked games I can get. But we've got the different categories here. So either I've classified the games as having abstract objectives or effect chains that are difficult for kids to grapple with. Either they have complex gameplay or communication limits. That's what I meant when I said you can't lean in and read the card for their child without ruining the game. And then there are some games on here that I think are suitable for kids of younger age, but I think they're overrated. I've identified a few of those. And then I've got the ones that I think are suitable for younger kids and recommended. I put those in blue. And then finally, there are just some games that I don't think belong on the list. I'm not sure why they're even here. They're like 2-player games. I don't really think of a 2-player game as a family game. So we're going to look at all of them. Look at how far down the list we have to go before you finally see one that is suitable and recommended. So right off the bat, the top 3 games are just, there's too much going on in Wingspan, Lost Ruins of Arnak, and Everdell. A lot of reading. I would not recommend any of those for younger kids. I think The Crew is an excellent game. I love this game, except it is a game where it is very important that you don't know what other players have in their cards, and it is a pretty difficult game. It can be hard even for adults, so it's just not one for children. Crokinole, I've played. Crokinole is a dexterity game. It's pretty cool. I'm looking more for thematic board games, so I said it's suitable but overrated. Maybe saying it doesn't belong on the list is more appropriate. Then we've got a few of those. I'm not a big fan of Quacks of Quedlinburg. Cascadia is abstract, even though it's got animals in it. Azul is extremely abstract. My kids are not interested in Azul. And there's kind of a gotcha mechanic where you leave a player with bad tiles. That can be frustrating. Now, Clank is a cool game. If you're not familiar with Clank, I have identified it as suitable for kids of all ages, except I think there's a better game a little bit later down the list, and you'll see that in a minute. I think Seven Wonders has too much going on. Isle of Cats, that was not popular with my kids. Clank is another version. Patchwork is a 2-player game. It's got a great mechanic. We're going to see later on there's a game like Patchwork that I think is much better. Cartographers. Cartographers is one of the most suitable games I think that would really go well. I have other games that I like instead. Parks is too abstract. Azul is too abstract. And then finally, The Quest for El Dorado. So way down here at line 18. This is my favorite family board game that is also highly ranked on BoardGameGeek. The Quest for El Dorado is the more interesting version of Clank, in my opinion. Basically, this is a racing game. And the reason I think it appeals well to children who are younger is because children understand what racing means. My 6-year-old knows that the point is to be the first player to get to El Dorado. And this is a game where players are building a deck of cards. And each card they have helps them get through a hex jungle. So there are jungle spaces and river spaces, and you're moving through by playing different cards, and then like most deck builders, you discard your cards and you draw from your deck. And you, on your turn, you either play or buy more cards. But I like this one because it is simpler than Clank. That's really what I'm looking for. Games that are simpler, easier to understand, and don't have too much going on. Welcome to be honest, I shouldn't have classified this. I have never played Welcome to, so I think it is a little too abstract. I've looked at the rules. Now, cooperative games. Again, I'm going to go quickly through the ones that I don't highly rank, but I want to tell you why Pandemic, all of the Pandemic ones, and the other cooperative games really don't work, is when you are playing cooperative with your kids, while it can be really fun, it feels like you kind of have to dumb yourself down in order to engage your kids. The whole idea of cooperative is everybody's sharing ideas and you're talking about strategy together. But as an adult, it's not fun when you're kind of like having to nudge your kids and say, hey, isn't this a good idea? Maybe we should do this. Or your kid can come up with an idea and you can entertain it, even though you as the adult at the table have a better sense of the probabilities involved. There's a lot of probability in Pandemic. And it doesn't work well when you're not playing with people who are equal. So I called that game too complex. It is a great game. You just need to have people that are on your level. Now that's pretty clever. Did not rank this one. I have heard many things from people who watch my videos that That's Pretty Clever is a great game. This may be one that you want to take a look at. Stone Age is a worker placement. Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride is suitable, but I think it's overrated because it's not fun for me as a grown-up to play with my kids, especially when there's route blocking. Horrified, awesome game, like Pandemic though, so too complex. Another Ticket to Ride game. Now Calico I marked as both suitable and abstract. Here's the thing. Calico is a tile placing game where you are getting points for cats, points for colors, and points for patterns. The patterns part is very abstract, but in the family version of the game, it's just collecting cats and collecting colors. And my children get that. They understand that getting cats and colors is good. And they understand the strategy involved to do just that. So Calico is a great game because you can play the family version, and adults, if they want to challenge, they can play the adult version while the kids are playing like the child version. So that's why we like that very much. Japer is a 2-player game. It really doesn't belong here. My City. I should have said that My City is abstract because it is. But this is a Tetris piece, like what do you call it? Polynomino placing game. It is the better version of Patchwork, basically. Patchwork, you're trying to cover a quilt with polynomino tiles. And in My City, you are trying to cover a landscape with city tiles. It's a little abstract, but the kids understand it. It's gone well with our family, so I like it. Micro Macro. So if you haven't played this game before, it doesn't belong on the list because it's not a board game. It's like a Where's Waldo. The game is about trying to find things on a huge picture that you put on your table. I think that's really cool, but I don't think it's a board game. So if you've heard of that and you've seen it's highly rated, you might check it out, but it's not really a board game. Sagrada is too abstract. Space Base. Man, I had high hopes for Space Base. I just think that there's too much luck involved. I don't find it engaging as an adult. Codenames. Codenames Duet. Why is Codenames Duet here? It's for 2 players. A much better game is Codename Pictures, because Codename Pictures doesn't depend on reading, and the kids can actually play along. I love playing Codename Pictures with my kids. So I said this doesn't belong here, but I wanted to note that Codenames Pictures is very good. By the way, I will probably upload this as a Google Drive. I'll have to figure out the best way to do it, but I will make sure this file is downloaded since I'm having to go through so quickly. A few games that I'm not going to be able to comment on. I really haven't played them enough. Splendor, to be honest, I haven't played it with my 6-year-old, but Splendor is easy to understand, and it has the same objective that children understand. In Splendor, you're just trying to get stuff. You're trying to get coins. You're trying to buy cards. There's also there's a strategy about Splendor that I think is simple enough that I can introduce this to my 6-year-old. But asterisk, I have not played it with my 6-year-old yet. Okay, more games I haven't played. Carcassonne, I think, is just a little too abstract and not artistic enough to be interesting to my kids. Ticket to Ride again. Sushi Go, I'm sort of over it now. I actually think that there are better passing drafting games out there, but not on the top 100. Isle of Skye is a wonderful game to play with adults. It would not be a game to play with children. It is a betting game. It's a tile placing game with a bidding mechanic. I'm really interested in looking more into Meadow and Camel Up. I can't believe I haven't played Camel Up. I really need to take a look at that. I would like to know from the people watching my video if Camel Up is worth trying out. I am sure my viewers have played this before, and I just haven't gotten around to it. Dice Throne. Dice Throne is kind of like Battle Yahtzee. I don't really like playing a game where you are combating against your I mean, it's a 2-player game too. I don't like combating against my kids so directly unless they're picking on me. Cryptid, awesome, but it requires your children or hidden information, so you can't play with kids. King Domino. This was one of my highest ranked games in my top 10 family list. King Domino is excellent if your kids have a short attention span because it plays very, very quickly, and there is an excellent tile placing mechanic. It's a little abstract. What you're trying to do is increase the size of various plots of land to get more points, and you are building the areas of land by placing matching dominoes together. Burgle Brothers, abstract. Not only that, but that's not just abstract, but it's like a Pandemic. This is another cooperative game. I haven't played Bunny Kingdom. It looks like I think it's a worker placement. I've looked at the rules. It's too complex. Arboretum is way too abstract. There are just so many games on this list that are not approachable for children. Aha! Barren Park. Barren Park is probably better than My City. It's probably more popular than My City. I have no idea why it's only down here as 54. This is a game where you are trying to fill a square grid by placing tiles, and when you place a tile on top of an icon on the grid, the icon you place it on tells you what tile you can pick up next. So what you're trying to do is be strategic about what tiles you get, but the only way to get tiles is to place tiles that cover certain spaces. It's a really fun mechanic, and I think it would be fun for my kids, although my kids have not played it. Gizmos is one of my favorite family games, and it is my go-to for a game that I think is more streamlined than Wingspan. So Wingspan is number 1, Gizmos is 55, but I think Gizmos plays a lot smoother, faster, and is more fun, although my 6-year-old is not as into the complicated chain. Gizmos is a game where you can have chain effects, and for 6 years old, she doesn't really get that yet, but my 8-year-old does, and it's a little bit more fun with her than with KK. Twice as Clever. Did I already mention this? We've got the That's So Clever up above and Twice as Clever. Haven't tried these games yet, but I've heard many things from my viewers in the comments. I have said that. Haven't played Survive. Ticket to Ride games I've already talked about. For Sale, haven't played. Exit the Game. Man, I really like the Exit games. They are so fun, but they are not for children. They're too hard. These are puzzle games. You need to play this with teenagers or older. I said that Downforce is too abstract, and here's why. Downforce is a car racing game, so I've already recommended one car racing game, or one racing game, the Road to El Dorado. The thing with Downforce is you're racing cars, but you have to place your bets on the cars before the game starts, and then you are discarding your own cards in order to advance the cards along the track. I haven't played with my kids. I feel like the car theme isn't going to appeal to them as much, but it's something that might be a lot of fun if you have a family that would be into a car theme. So I'm not sure where I land with that one. More Azul. I've played Small World before, but it was years ago. I'm not sure how to rank that one. Takanoko. Takanoko is getting old. 2011. Takanoko is definitely a game you can play with your kids, and it's pretty interesting for grown-ups. Well, it's interesting if you're playing with your kids, okay? I would not play Takanoko with only adults, probably. But there are very cute characters. You've got a panda that's trying to eat bamboo, a gardener that's trying to grow bamboo, and a garden that you need to grow and satisfy certain requirements. And so this is a game where everybody controls all of the different characters. They grow the garden, they control the gardener, they control the panda, and they're getting points if they satisfy objective cards. But it's adorable. I have never liked Love Letter. I've never liked it. And it's on here in like 3 or 4 editions, Love Letter. It's too short. The secret role cards I don't think are going to go well with young kids anyway. But yeah, it's not. It doesn't matter. It's not good for 6. It's another game where communication is limited. People have secret cards. They have to kind of fib about it. A 6-year-old can't fib or bluff. Lost Cities is 2-player. King of Tokyo, Dark Edition. So actually, I haven't played Dark Edition. I've only played King of Tokyo, but it is not fun for grown-ups. This is a game where you have monsters that are attacking each other, and you're rolling dice to see what the monsters are going to be capable of doing. I've played with kids, my kids, and also my friends' kids who like this game, but it is too silly and simple for me to really enjoy. I have another game like that on this list, by the way. Mysterium is kind of spooky. It's cooperative. It has communication limits. I'm going to put that down there again. Tiny Towns. Okay. To be honest, Tiny Towns is super abstract. But I'm going to put it down here as recommended. Here's why. Tiny Towns is a game where you're getting points by placing cubes on a very small square grid. And anytime your cubes match a pattern, you get to put a building in their place. It requires a lot of planning. And what I like about it is that players can all play at the same time. So there is no downtime in this game. The only taking of turns is you take turns of who selects the tile. Now, to be honest, I've never played it with my 6-year-old, so I don't know if she can actually play this yet, but it is a really great puzzle game. It's going to keep you thinking, and it might be good for ages 8 and up. And I do like that games of this are pretty swift, so I've recommended it multiple times. Skull King, I've got to say, this is another game where it's a trick-taking game. If your children are old enough to play a trick-taking game, if they've played hearts or spades or something like that, they can probably play Skull King. My 6-year-old cannot, but this is a lot of fun. It is a trick-taking game where you're trying to bet on a certain number of tricks. And to be perfectly honest, the reason I kept it on the list is because it is great for a large family of young adults and older. So maybe I shouldn't have even put it on here for a 6-year-old. Oh man, I really want to play Hunting Buzz, but I just think it's too complicated with the worker placement and planning. Dice Forge. Okay, Dice Forge is a game that kids get because the objective of Dice Forge is to get stuff. And you get stuff by rolling dice. And everybody rolls their dice at the same time. So like all of the games that I highly rate, there is no downtime. You're always doing something and you're always getting stuff. And then when it's your turn, you can use the stuff you've got to buy stuff. My 6-year-old gets that. And there's a little bit of like you have to understand what the symbols mean so that when you buy cards, you can use those cards' abilities, but that is not a barrier for her. So Dice Forge has gone over very, very well. This is a excellent family game. It shouldn't be number 77. It should be 10 or higher, honestly. It is a little bit of a setup though to set up and to take down because you are making your own dice actually. Another version of Love Letter, Zombie Kids. I put this one on here. I might even put this on here. My kids like it because this is a legacy cooperative game that they can play. It's a cooperative game that kids can play because it involves dice rolling. You're moving characters around to fight zombies. You're rolling the dice to see where the next zombie appears, and you've got characters with special abilities. The more you play the game, the greater your abilities become. I think that's very interesting. For me, this is a lot like King of Tokyo, where there's just it's just not interesting enough for me as an adult. But I had to put it on here because it's one of the only cooperative games where I don't think you have to dumb yourself down in order to play with your kids. Like, there's enough luck involved that almost anything could be a good move, but there does kind of feel like there's some thoughtful decision making involved in how you're going to team up in order to lock out the zombies. The next one, Pitch Car. Okay, this kind of goes along the lines of Crokinole. It is a flicking game, but in Pitch Car, you're spending a lot more money on this game, though. You are flicking little discs or checkers. They look like checkers. They are cars, and they're going around a track. One of my criticisms of these kinds of games is that, especially with Ice Cool, if you're familiar with Ice Cool, is that the flicking motion is actually really difficult for a 5 or 6-year-old to do with very much strength. So my daughter gets frustrated because she can't flick it far. But if your child can do that, then this is a really fun racing dexterity game. I have never played Point Salad, but I don't want to because I think it's too abstract. Pandemic. This does not belong here. I took a good look at Wonderland's War, and it is way too complicated. It doesn't, I mean, it's got a family theme. It's Alice in Wonderland, but it looks way too complicated. Kingsburg is a great dice game. I want to call this a family game. I just don't think a young kid can do it. So it's not for a 6-year-old. King of Tokyo, I've already mentioned. Atlantis Rising is too complicated. This is another cooperative game. Finally, what we have is Railroad Inc. Have not played this with my daughter, to be honest. I do think this is a game that a young child can do if they can draw. So what's happening is you are trying to complete railroad routes, and you get railroads by rolling dice. Each of the die has a little road or a railroad on it, and then you draw the pattern from the die onto your map. And you're trying to do this in a way that will go through certain locations on your map and help you get some points. And in that regard, it's a little too abstract. Well, it's almost like a racing game, honestly, because they understand they're supposed to get stuff and that will give you points. I don't know. Haven't played it with my 6-year-old. Do think it'd be really fun, though. And it's certainly fun for grown-ups. And it's a game that everyone is doing stuff at the same time. You're rolling the dice, and everyone gets to choose from the dice that are rolled. That part is very good. Talked about Small World. I shouldn't have put a rating on here, though, because it's been too long since I've played it. Emotep. Oh, man. Played that with my wife, and she hated it. Love Letter. I already talked about Love Letter. And then Citadels. Boy, I love Citadels. This is a role selection game. In this role selection game, each player picks a card that is their role, and then you go through the roles in order. 1, 2, 3. Like, who is role number 1, role number 2, number 3. And they have different abilities. Like, they can steal money, or they can build something, or they can draw cards, and there's all of these things that you can do. I think I've enjoyed this with adults. I believe if you played this game enough, your kids could learn the roles. The problem is there's text on the cards, and it's very important that you don't know what other players have. Like, there's a thief card. The thief's ability is they can select another role, and then when their turn comes up, if somebody is that role, the thief gets to steal their money. So it doesn't work if the thief knows who's who. It only works if the thief has no idea who's who. And so if your children can't take a roll card and know secretly what it is, if they have to say, hey, what does this one do? It's not going to work. It's going to give away the secret. But if you can learn the game well enough that the kids already know what the objectives are, I think it could be fun. It's probably one of the more complicated games since you're trying to score victory points by building your city cards. But boy, is it fun to play with adults. I mean, and that reason alone might be a great card. And then Valeria I haven't played. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 12, 26. There's probably like 30 games on here that I didn't mark. And probably about 70 that I did. The top most suitable games, in my opinion. I'm going to go through all of them one more time. Okay? I think The Quest for El Dorado is 1. I'm going to say Calico because of the family version is 2. I'm going to say My City. I'm going to say Micro Macro. And Codenames Pictures. I'm not going to say Splendor, actually. I think it's a little too abstract. King Domino for sure, that's 6. Baron Park for sure, that's 7. Gizmos, that's 8. Downforce, I'm not too confident about Downforce. Takenoko, I did say this is a game I wouldn't want to play with just adults, but I'm gonna put it on here. It's interesting enough, and I've enjoyed playing it with just my wife, especially when it first came out. That's 9. Tiny Towns, too abstract. Skull King, too complex. Dice Forge, absolutely, that's 10. Zombie Kids, probably not the best for grown-ups. Pitch Car, depends on the flicking, so I'm not going to put it down. And Railroad Inc., theoretically, I haven't played it with my 6-year-old. Theoretically, it depends on their drawing skills. And then Citadels, maybe too hard. So I've got 10 games on here Just those 10 that I think are really appropriate for children 6, 7, or 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. There are some games I left blank. If there is something that you think I should have recommended, that's pretty clever. I got to look more into that. Camel Up, I got to look more into that. I think those are actually have a lot of potential. And then there's some on here I don't know anything about. I don't know anything about this bicycle game. I have no idea. Thank you for watching. Ooh, boy, there's a 30-minute video.